I'm Gemma and I'm a lecturer at Aberystwyth in the biology department, which we refer to ourselves as IBERS, very fancy name. Whenever I was coming up with what I wanted to talk to you about today, and with this idea of the challenges of 2030, I really couldn't pinpoint it down to just one topic, okay? Because within the natural world, which I'm really interested in researching, there are numerous issues, but I was able to filter it down to thinking about the top two, okay, the big ones, that of climate change and habitat loss. We really do need to be concerned with climate change. It's happening at the minute. In the past, the Earth, yes, it has experienced past fluctuations of climate, but what's different about the current period of change is that it's very fast. It's happening at an unprecedented rate, okay? And this is something, as scientists, I'm an evolutionary geneticist, but I work in this area of research and we're concerned about it and we need to do something about it. The other issue of habitat loss is just as significant. We lose large swathes of natural habitat daily, and if we continue to lose habitat at this rate, there's going to be nowhere for our fantastic, wonderful species that we have on this planet to live in, okay? We need to start doing something about it now. It's not just me that thinks this, okay? And hopefully you guys are, if you're studying biology, you'll have come across this and you'll be concerned about it. So if we think about what the world is like now in 2020, well, lots of governments and conservation bodies, they get together and they publish this report. It's called the State of Nature, and it's published within the UK, and then that data then gets fed into huge, big global considerations. So if we focus on the UK's report, this is published every few years, and really this is a health check put together by different conservationists and scientists, and they highlight the fact that yes, climate change is happening, habitat loss is happening, and it is resulting in a decrease in biodiversity. So populations are dwindling in number, and that puts species under the threat of extinction. And if we look at a bigger scale, at the global scale, all the data from the State of Nature, so this is conservation groups monitoring our natural environment, it gets fed into what is known as the Global Living Planet Index. So this index, it's done by all the countries in the world. We monitor populations of different mammals, of different birds, of different fish, of different amphibians and reptiles, and we compare what we have presently, so right throughout the 2000s and currently for this year in 2020, compared to what we had in the 1970s. And the data from this, it's not good news, guys, okay? So over 68% of those populations that have been monitored, their numbers, the size of them and the number of individuals within them has dropped dramatically, okay? It's not a very pleasing pattern, and it's something that we need to be concerned about and we need to do something about it. So that's the bad news. I don't want to focus on the bad news for the rest of the talk because there is good news out there, and the United Nations have put forward a challenge for us all. So they have evolved this 2030 challenge for the world, and it consists of 17 sustainability goals. So they range from alleviating poverty to protecting health of different people across the world, but some of these goals are targeted to protecting the natural world. And what they want to happen is that they want this next decade, between 2020 now and right up until the end of this challenge, 2030 challenge, they want us to really act within the next 10 years. It's really going to be over to you guys. You are at school at the minute. You might be finishing off your A levels or whatever qualifications you're completing. You might go on to do a job, or you might go to university. But whatever you do, you have to be engaged with this challenge, okay? If we focus on the goals for the natural world, these are goals 13, 14 and 15. So goal 13, this is all about climate action, and we really do need to act within this next decade. So as I said, climate change is happening. We're in a +1 degree world. The very scary predictions of the future is that temperature could increase possibly over 4 degrees in some places, and that would be absolutely catastrophic for our natural environment. These next years are the years that we need to act. And if you switch on your TVs, you'll hear all about the Paris Agreement. So this is about different governments signing up to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the good news is at the minute is that we've got hopefully America back on board, okay, with the new president that's been elected. So that is very good news. Goal 14 is all about protecting our oceans. Again, we are polluting our oceans, and the hot topic of the moment is the threat of plastics in our oceans. This is getting into food chains in lots globally, right throughout the Atlantic, the Pacific. No matter where you go, we are detecting these microplastics. So we need to protect the marine life, and we need to stop polluting them. So this was the focus of goal number 14. Goal 15 is about protecting the terrestrial ecosystems that we have. These are just as degraded as the marine ones. With the terrestrial ecosystems, we need to protect what we have left, because as I noted, we're using up lots of land and converting it for agricultural purposes. So we need to protect what's remaining, and what's left to connect core habitats together, we need to start restoring habitat. And that is a huge big challenge, and I'm going to focus on this challenge and talk about a little bit about my research. But as I said, it's over to you guys, okay? You're the next generation coming through, and you've got to be able to achieve these goals along with us oldies as well, okay? So I want you guys to either pop on the chat or talk on the microphone. You know, do you think we've got a chance of achieving these goals? And how do you think that they can be achieved? Is it going to be through governments, or is it going to be through people acting? Are you okay, Rob, to see what's coming through in the chat there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll look out for anything on chat, and then also maybe we can come across to the student at Mark Rutherford that's got the microphone in front of your name. If you're happy to open up the mic and just tell us maybe some of your thoughts while we wait for other thoughts on the chat. Just give you a moment in case, so it's a student that's got the M in front of the name, but don't worry if it's a problem or you can't open up the mic. We're looking out for comments on the chat as well. So any thoughts on the chat, but if you're happy at Mark Rutherford, the student at Mark Rutherford, to open up the mic, then that's great. But were you looking for your thoughts about how these goals can be achieved? But just give it a moment, Gemma.
No worries. And even their thoughts on, what they think about, climate change or habitat loss or conservation, how we're acting at the minute. Any comments welcome.
Yeah, so Jacob's come through. Consume less animal-based products, checking every wrapper or packaging for its recycling capabilities, buying seeds. So some comments here. Thank you, Jacob, for that.
Yeah, that's great.
I guess others are sort of just typing.
Getting warmed up. No worries.
Yeah.
Well, sure, we can come back to that if they've got anything else to comment at the end. So what I'm going to do is, if you're happy enough, Bob, I'm going to move on to the DG project.
Yeah, can I just share one thing from Kaylee and one thing from Sophie? So Kaylee is saying, I think people acting is only a small part. Large corporations produce a lot of greenhouse gases and use up fossil fuels. However,
Yeah,
consumer demand for meat and plastic packaging leads to deforestation and fossil fuel use. Sorry.
yeah.
And then Sophie is saying big companies will have the most impact. And we've got a few other comments as well, but I'll let you carry on
Oh,
and then we'll maybe
yeah.
come back to some of those.
No, I just want to say that is a very good point. Big companies do have a huge impact, and it's something that I think that governments need to really target them as well. So no, these are excellent comments, guys. So I'm glad to see we're on board with this. So hopefully you'll appreciate the next bit then. So I said I don't want to be too doom and gloom whenever I'm giving this webinar today. I want to talk positively. So I'm going to talk about a bit of the research that I do along with our students at Aberystwyth. So this is a project, and I'll tell you about it in the next 15 minutes. Hopefully I can get through all this content, but it's called DGbarcoding project. So once a year, I head out into the rainforest. I'm one lucky duck. And I head out with a fantastic scientist called Natasha De Vere. So she's head of science at the National Botanic Gardens of Wales. If you haven't had the chance to ever head there, it's in the south of Wales in Carmarthen. Go. It's amazing. She's also a lecturer at Aberystwyth. We're very lucky to have her. So the two of us take the students out, a group of students in their third year. They are undertaking a module called Tropical Rainforest Ecology and Conservation. For short, we call it TREC, okay, because we're lazy. And what we do when we're out there is we carry out this project. It's a conservation project. Borneo. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been. If you have, tell me your experiences, pop it in the chat. It's an amazing place, but it takes ages to get to. So here's us in the UK, if you can see my little mouse, and we have to get lots of flights halfway around the world, and this is Borneo itself. We are aiming to go to the north of Borneo. It's called Sabah, and this is an area which is under Malaysian control, okay? So we have Sabah, we have Sarawak, Brunei is its own kingdom, and then the south of Borneo, it's under Indonesian control, but we're aiming for Sabah. And the Pacific place that we go to is the Kilimantan Reserve, and this huge big Kilimantan river runs through it. Borneo has some of the oldest rainforests in the world, and because the rainforests have been there for so long, these are some of the most diverse areas in the world, and the rainforest there, what's left of it, is amazing. So the Kilimantan Wildlife Sanctuary, we have these forest lots which are in green, which kind of fringe the river itself. What's very sad is this area in white, okay? This was once rainforest, but this habitat has now been converted into oil palm plantation plots, okay? So I don't know if you've heard of oil palm before, but it's a substance that's very important commercially. It's in shampoos, in soaps, it's even in your Nutella that goes on your breakfast in the morning, okay? Lots of products have it. And unfortunately, it grows in places where the rainforest once was. So there has been large swathes of the rainforest which have been cleared in order to have these oil palm plantations. And what that means for the rainforest is there's only small fragments of it left. And these are these little lots that we can see here. But what is left is just amazing. So I said it's this area of, mega biodiversity. So I've been lucky enough to head out with the students, and every year we get to see glimpses of the fantastic species that they have there. So every morning we see crocodiles in the river. Last year in 2019 when we were there, we always see orangutans, but in that particular year we had orangutans in camp. So we had a mummy orangutan with her little baby, and the baby was being very naughty. It was stealing low-hanging fruit of some of the trees near our little huts that we stay in. So every morning I woke up to a baby orangutan being told off by her mum for dropping her fruit. There are sun bears. There are pygmy elephants in Borneo. So 2 years ago we were lucky enough, they were grazing right opposite the field station. So we would go out at night and watch them grazing. Loads of different species of frogs, of birds, scorpions, proboscis monkeys, amazing tree species. This is the flower of a very famous tree there, Delinia excelsior. It's just amazing. It's worthwhile you get yourselves to the rainforest once in your life, okay? It will blow your mind if you're into biology and evolution. And now I've talked about it like it's a bit of a holiday, okay? It is great, but we do some work whenever we're over there. And this project that we work along with a local conservation cooperative. They're called COPAL, so they're a village group that works because they use the rainforest. So they work to conserve and restore the rainforest. So this is them working on invasive species, clearing it from an oxbow lake. They also get us to work. So this is Natasha, who I work with. She's clearing some oil palm from a site, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. And they have an eco lodge there, so you can go on holiday and you can do some conservation work. And the place that we stay at and we work with the people who work there, along with COPAL, is the Danny Durang Field Centre. So this is our little jetty. So up from COPAL, we get the boat up, and this is what we call home. So we get home to our jetty, and the field station's just there. This is what we go to visit, the rainforest. But more and more, as we're going upriver from COPAL, from their village Badapudi, to the field station, this is what we're seeing. So this is the oil palm plantations, and this is elephant grass. What we should be seeing between the river and the plantations is a 50-metre buffer of rainforest. So all that fantastic wildlife that we talked about has somewhere to be. But more and more often we're not seeing that. The companies that grow the oil palm say, oh, the rainforest was there, but because the river is so dynamic, it just fell in. It disappeared, okay? What they're doing at the minute, this is illegal, okay? Shouldn't be cultivated on. So us, along with COPAL and DGFC, we're going to try and restore those buffer regions. So they're going to clear that oil palm from that 50-metre buffer strip. And then the idea is that they want to grow fast-growing trees which are in the rainforest. And the idea is not to, restore all the different rainforest species, but just to restore those fast-growing species to this area, and then to allow natural regeneration to happen. So once you have those initial trees and you have this closed canopy, then the seed dispersers, the different birds and mammals, they're going to come in, use that area and bring in the seeds and allow the rainforest to regenerate. Now this is going to take time to do. It's not an overnight thing, but it's important that we do this now. To do this and to monitor what's going to happen in those restoration plots, we need to know what's actually happening within the rainforest itself. So we need to know the composition of the species in the plots of the rainforest that are left. So what we've done is we have, in these locations along the river, these little numbers, we have set up areas 50 by 50 metres squared where we want to understand the composition of the rainforest and how it regenerates. So to do that, we are sampling all the adult trees and all the saplings. And then we also have plots set up in these areas where the rainforest is going to be restored. So this is where the COPAL and DGFC, along with our students, have replanted the trees, the fast-growing trees, but we want to monitor the regeneration that's happening there as well. So these are our research questions. We want to understand the composition of the rainforest. It's called secondary forest. It's not like it's second best forest, okay? It's a term because it's a swamp forest. It's a definition of the type of forest that we have within the Kilimanjaro. So we want to know what species are there, we want to know how it regenerates by looking at the saplings, and we want to keep an eye on the regeneration at the restoration sites. Now, to be able to tell the species that are there, normally you use morphometric techniques. So looking at leaf morphology, we've all seen an oak leaf and can say, oh, that's an oak leaf. And the oak sapling leaves look very similar to the oak adult leaves. In the rainforest, it's not that simple. How the saplings look is very different to how the adults look, both in the leaf shape and also the barks of the trees. They change dramatically. So we can't use just traditional morphological techniques. We have to use what's known as DNA barcoding, and I'll come on to this in a minute. But before that, I want to show you some pictures of the plots. So this is within a riparian plot. So this is a forest which is right at the river, and this is within one of our permanent plots there. This is in a semi-inundated area. So we can see it's not as densely vegetated as the riparian forest, and the riparian places, that's where you get your orangutan area. In the semi-inundated places, you can see it's a lot less dense, but you have these trees with these huge big buttress roots. That's because these are areas in heavy rain, they flood. But we have to be very careful when they flood, because if you're in the rainforest and the area floods and it goes above your ankle, that means that crocodiles can be in there, okay? So that's whenever we avoid those areas at all costs, because there's something known as a kill zone. So that is in a kill zone. Anywhere a metre away from standing water is a kill zone for crocodiles, so we don't linger there. So we only collect whenever it's dry. So as I say, we go in, we collect the adults and the saplings, and we collect leaf material so we can carry out this DNA barcoding. With the DNA barcoding, we preserve the leaf material of every single adult and sapling within each of those plots, and we keep it in silica gel. We extract the DNA and then we carry out a PCR because we want to amplify up a little barcoding region. Now, just to give you a little background on this, DNA barcodes just tell us what a species is, okay? And they were only discovered and studied from about 2003 onwards. So I don't know how old you guys are. Some of you might not be able to be born whenever they were coming about, but they're very, very new. And as I said, they've got two applications. First of all, they allow us to identify species, but also they allow us to find new species as well, okay? And in the rainforest, that's important because we could be, uncovering species that we haven't come across before because of the mega biodiversity. We are dealing with plants, so go back to your biology lessons here, guys, okay? In plants, they have chloroplasts, okay? This is where the photosynthesis happens. And the chloroplasts have their own genome. And it's little bits of that genome that we are sequencing up that allow us to identify that plant to species level. In animals, we use a little bit of the DNA that's in the mitochondrial genome. So again, back to your basic biology, your cell biology, the mitochondria, that's the powerhouse of the cell. It has its own genome, and we are sequencing a little bit of that. That allows us, that little CO1 region allows us to identify animals down to species level. Fungi are a bit annoying, okay, because we actually have to use a nuclear region. It's called ITS. And because it's nuclear, it's diploid, so there's two copies. So it's a bit fiddly in the lab, that's all I'm going to say. Whereas with the mitochondria and the chloroplasts, they're known as haploid. So these are the circular DNA, one copy. So they're nice and easy to sequence. When it comes to sequencing, this is what we're seeing, okay? Are your eyes funny yet? So, each of these lines is a different individual. They're actually a different species. This is a barcoding set. We can see our nucleotides, so our A, our T, our C's, and our G's. So we're reading, those nucleotides, the basis of life, And what we're looking at with these barcoding regions to tell different species about is we can see, here's an example, here's a little mutation that's happening. So at this particular species, it has a C in this position instead of a T. So all these mutations, they give that sequence its individual characteristic, and we're able to resolve that to species level. So that's how it works. I know it's a bit complicated, but you know, if you're interested in it, go and Google it, do some research on it. Now to the results, the best bit. So here we have the result of our permanent forest plots. And this is the number of adult taxa, and here we have the number of sapling taxa. Some of the plots, remember these are 50 by 50 meters squared, they have 43 species in them. Rob, I'm going to put a question to these guys and they can have a think about it. How many native tree species do you think we have in the UK? Right? And my question is, do you think that some of these plots have higher or lower numbers than what we have in the entire UK in terms of species? So if those guys want to pop that on the chat, that would be really great.
Yeah, fire away. Do you want to deal with that now, or are you going to come back to it in a moment?
Well, let's just see. I just want to, even if there's some numbers there's some numbers. Does anyone want to have a guess how many species we have of trees in total within the UK? Any guesses coming through?
So yeah, Purdy is saying 20. Jasmine, 23 native species, more in the rainforest. Kaylee, 25. I think higher in the rainforest. Joe, 62. Jacob, more in the rainforest. Sophie,
Okay.
60. So yeah, 64 from per business. So yeah, quite a few suggestions coming.
Grand. So in total in the UK, we have about 70 native species, but that's completely over like all of the UK. And in one 50 by 50 meter plot in the rainforest, we're finding 43 different species. Okay, so well over half what we have. It's astonishing. Okay, and we're actually finding species that we can't resolve the taxonomy for. So these might be new species that we're finding as well with this study, which is quite exciting. So here we have, say, our adults and our saplings. Let's go to quickly consider the restoration sites. So these were Copel and DG, and our students planted these trees in these buffer areas. This is a picture from KPO3 in 2014, little baby saplings. Things grow fast in the rainforest, and whenever we visited with the guys in 2018, this is pictures from the same plot. The trees grew really, really high, and we're starting to see that closed canopy forming. So these are our students. This is Luke and Matt. They're looking very, you know, proper scientists in the field there. I do like this. This picture, now I'm sorry that I maybe made these too small, but this is drone footage taken by Danica. She's a permanent researcher in the DG field station, Danny Durang. So this is the area, if I pop my mouse along, that we're replanting. This is 2014 down to 2018. So here we have the saplings are planted, and I hope you guys can see the difference. We actually have a canopy here forming in 2018, so that is brilliant, and that is a huge effort, okay, by these guys. Whenever it comes to the restoration plots, we have the adults. We obviously don't have many species because they are the ones that have been planted. But what's really interesting is the saplings, the number of species. Regeneration is happening in that really small window of time. And whenever it comes to the type of species coming in, they are similar to what you find in the rainforest itself. So we don't have this problem. We're really worried about invasive species, but we don't have this problem. We're seeing these characteristic species coming in, and this is fantastic news. This research needs to be supported, and we are fully aware that this research is dealing with habitat loss and creating these buffer regions to link up core habitats of what's left, because palm oil is a major issue. And we're also very aware climate change, it's going to affect the tropics. And we have to be careful about our movement and our carbon footprint. So every time that we go to the rainforest, we pay into what is known as this Regrow Borneo fund, and the idea is that it's supposed to balance out our carbon footprint for traveling over, and the money that we pay goes directly towards paying for the COPL and DGFC to carry out this study along with us. Okay, so the field station itself, it is run by Cardiff, but there are buds in Wales, so we go and use it as well. So you can check out everything about this Regrow site. So just wanted to stop there, Rob, and just if those guys have any questions about, the impact of climate change on the tropics, habitat loss, or about the project, any comments about that they want to put through at this minute would be great.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, it's a great chance now just to ask any questions, as Gemma's said. So please do pop anything on the chat. I'm not sure, we've got a couple of schools connected as well. So I don't know about Sprowston, whether you've got a microphone available to you if you want to open it up and just make some comments. Also Stanford American School. So feel free to open up the mic there or just pop anything on the chat. But any questions at this point, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
So Kaylee is asking, do you have a DNA reference library to compare samples to?
Yes, that's an excellent question, Kaylee. My goodness, yes, so we do. So there were a few studies done, very basic reference library. So we went to Kew Gardens and got some of their Hyperium sheets, and they had done a few barcodes on that, but we were effectively creating our own reference library mainly for the study. So that's why we went in with experts in tropical taxonomy to identify the tree species. And then obviously the next stage is once we were able to barcode them, that kind of confirmed it. But there were a few glitches because I say we think we may have found a few new species which the DNA's unveiling to us, which the morphometrics couldn't. So that's a fantastic question. Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, we've got a few coming through now. So Kate, thank you very much for that. Pavizna is asking, how long has your campaign been running?
So this project started we got involved at the end of 2014, but COPL, they were the ones that the village cooperative, they're amazing group. You can find them on the on their website. They started this way back in 2010. There were extreme forest fires in the Kilimantan, so they were worried not only about the palm oil plantation but the destruction of these wildfire events. So that's whenever they started getting this idea together of restoring these buffer regions, and then it took them to 2014 to get the first saplings in there, and then we were going over to visit, so that's when they got us involved in providing that science backup. We're effectively monitoring, this restoration, and they obviously put us to work as well by getting the trees planted.
Great, thank you. So Phoebe is talking about a harder line on this. So I think that it is important to reduce or even stop palm oil consumption altogether, rather than just picking up the pieces of these ecosystems after the destruction. I think it needs to stop being normalized. So what do you think, Gemma, on that point from Phoebe?
That's a very good point. Whenever we bring our students over there, they're absolutely shocked at the extent of the palm oil, and they come back and they say, right, you know what, I'm not going to be using palm oil. There was a report that was put out by the IUCN, so this is a huge big global conservation body, and they actually said we shouldn't stop using palm oil, because the issue is that we're going to switch to another oil is going to be needed, and then another type of habitat might be restored. Maybe what we need to do is produce palm oil in a sustainable way. So reduce the input, so reduce the pesticides and the fertilizers that's needed, and to start claiming back parts of the habitat to create those wildlife corridors to link the core habitats. I'm completely it's a really tough question to answer, but it might be worthwhile Phoebe, if I could send you the link or something to that IUCN report. To be honest with you, we need to do something. We can't just let things be as they are, but it's a complex issue. But my students and I would support her. It's something that we need to do something about. So great. Can I move on, Rob, quickly to the next wee bit and then take some questions later? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got more questions, but yeah,
Oh,
let's
right.
deal with them in a while. Yeah.
I'll blast through this next bit, my love, and I do apologise, guys, if I go over. I'm Irish, I talk fast, so I'm trying to slow down here. So, what I do want to say before we leave the reinforced completely is this DNA reference set that myself and Natasha and the students are developing along with Copal and DG. This is fantastic baseline data to understand the composition of the forest and how it regenerates, and it opens up loads of research. And as I said, you guys are the future, so this could be, I've got some research questions up here that really need to be explored. I could have listed pages and pages of questions, but with this tool it will allow us to understand identification methods, understanding if we can uncover cryptic species, so things that look alike but actually have evolved separately. It allows us to look at plant pollinator interactions, looking at food webs, looking at very fancy phylogenetics and community ecology, and also the big question is understanding forest succession in fragmented landscapes, because that's what we have. We have these wee small isolated pockets of forest left. It's not as it should be. So guys, think about this. If you're interested in biology and want to do research for a job, come and see me and Natasha. We've got, there's stuff for you guys to do. We need to get people interested in this and working on it. I want to now talk about a project that's a little bit closer to home. So this is a very new project called ECHOS. So this project is looking at the impact of climate change on bird habitats across the Irish Sea. So this project has just launched this year, and the two key bird species that we're looking at is the Eurasian curlew. I have a little picture of it here. Gorgeous bird. It has this beak which in folklore is often supposed to mimic a crescent moon, so it's often linked with kind of the tides whenever you see it, so it's quite interesting. And the other species is the Greenland white-fronted goose. I've got a picture of it later on. Our coastal habitats are very important to us. Lots of species persist there. They're fantastic habitats, but they are going to disproportionately be more impacted by climate change. The reason for that is that just behind them, we have converted the land into agriculture. So this is a picture of one of our sites, the Dovey. It's absolutely amazing, but just behind where we've kind of cropped it nicely, this goes into intensely managed agricultural fields. Climate change is going to result in rising sea levels, okay? So we could be seeing what's referred to as a coastal squeeze. So a reduction of this habitat, but nowhere for that habitat to move to, because naturally through the Earth's time, sea levels have fluctuated, but we're here and we're changing those habitats. There's nowhere for this to naturally move to. And part of this huge big project, it's a massive interdisciplinary team, but a little part of it is looking at the diet choices of the Greenland white-fronted geese, and we're going to refer to this as the fast food hypothesis. So these particular species of geese in the summer they're in Greenland, but during the wintering periods they migrate. This is a map, shows 4 tagged Greenland geese, and it shows their movement, okay, to their wintering sites. They migrate to places like Wexford and to Scotland, and obviously these geese, they weren't fond of the Welsh weather, okay, so they didn't come down to Aberystwyth, but we do find some birds in the Dovey estuary in Wales. And our 2 sites for this project are the Dovey, which is just up from Aberystwyth, a beautiful, amazing place, and across the Irish Sea in Wexford in the North Slopes there. It's a huge journey for these geese to make, and what we're finding is they're being naughty geese, okay? They used to feed on quite healthy nutritious plant material in bogs and in salt marshes. But often what their eyes have been turned to these beautiful ryegrass fields, which are full of sugar and carbohydrates. Okay, we call this their choice of McDonald's or Burger King. Okay, they're on a fast food diet, right? They want to hit a bit like me on a Saturday night. I'm always like, oh, something a wee bit naughty. This fast food diet might actually be affecting the condition of the geese and how they migrate. And we want to know what's been happening, what's made this switch. Are they just being naughty, a little bit like us and wanting a treat? Or is the habitats where they used to feed on, the bogs and the salt marshes, are they being degraded? Okay, so they're not foraging there because they're not ideal. And this is, let's say the project has only started. So this is us in the formation. So this is the first time I've talked about this. So your ideas and thoughts are welcome, guys, honestly. How we're going to assess the diet of the geese, this is where I come in. So I'm an evolutionary geneticist, and I'm going to carry out what's called meta-barcoding. So it's using those wee regions of barcodes that we've talked about before, but we are going to extract all the DNA from an environmental sample. And the sample that I'm going to extract the DNA from is goose poo, okay? I'm not going to have a very pleasant February whenever I'm due to do this. So at the minute we're collecting the samples at these sites. In February, I'm going to go get myself covered up in all the forensic gear, okay, because I don't want to contaminate the samples. I'm going to extract the DNA. I'm going to PCR up with the barcoding regions all the DNA that's been extracted from all the different species that's contained within that fecal sample. We're going to run it on a very fancy machine called a next generation sequencing machine. So this is capable of producing millions and millions of sequences of all those little barcoding fragments. We're going to put them through a computer, and then we're going to analyze the different species that are present within that fecal sample. So we will know what the geese have been feeding on throughout their wintering time, both whenever they land at the sites at the Dovey and Wexford, during the January, the deep winter time, and then what they feed on before they do their next part of their migration back, okay? It has been noted that they might be quite healthy and switch to more salt marshy sites before they go back because they want to get a wee bit fit. So it's a bit like us going eating a bit more greens and vegetables before we're going to undertake any physical activity. My last question I wanted to pose to you is, I've talked about 2 research projects, and research has limitations. Funding is a major issue. So with the Borneo project, that was done on a shoestring really, okay, not much money. Within Europe, there's a lot more money available, so we have more money to carry out more fancy research within the ECHOS project. But as I said before, those very initial slides, whenever it comes to that global living planet index, we are seeing a bias of biodiversity loss within the tropics, okay? So maybe we need to think about balancing that. What do you guys think about the research that's being carried out and how research is supported? Do you know anything about it, or do you have any questions? So once you get your answers in for that, before I take any more questions from you, as I say, these are global challenges that lie ahead, and guys, you're the next generation coming through. It's over to you to find the solutions. At Aberystwyth, we run a number of courses, and I work in multidisciplinary teams. So I work along with people who have studied wildlife conservation, ecology, plant biology, veterinary biosciences. Climate change is a huge issue, and we offer biology and climate change at Aber. I myself did a biology degree. Whenever I started off, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I ended up being an evolutionary geneticist. So if you're not too sure, doing a broad scheme like that's good. Rob, I know you mentioned somebody's talking about zoology, brilliant scheme to do, and marine and freshwater biology. If you undertake these things, then you'll help in, carrying out research in the future to achieve those UN goals. But I also want to note that, I work along with mathematicians. I work along with people in the geography department. So it's not just this, it's multidisciplinary. So no matter what you want to do, there's an angle for you there. We have open days in Aberystwyth. Come and speak to myself and Jim. There's our email. Jim's in charge of some of the schemes. I'm in charge of other schemes. follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and obviously come to Aberystwyth anyway, just for a general day out. It's beautiful. Okay, come and get a wee ice cream. It's fantastic. So yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you guys, and questions, fire them at me if we've got time, Rob. I'm on to understand that I might have just went over.
No, absolutely brilliant, Gemma. Thank you so much. And we are at the scheduled time, so we completely understand if anyone needs to leave us at this point. But we have a number of questions that are outstanding. So I think we'll cover those questions, but we do fully understand if anyone needs to leave us at this point. So let's just come back to some questions. So Joe was asking about, this comes back to the palm oil. Who's actually planting it? Is it the government, or is it the locals? Is it a militia? You know, so who's planting the palm oil plantations?
So initially the palm oil plantations were set up by the government. So most of the destruction of the rainforest happened from the 1970s onwards. So they really struggled to find a good cash crop to grow in the tropics, especially in Borneo. And the government were the ones that were like, do you know what? Palm oil grows here really well. It'll enhance our economy. So, and rightly so, they wanted to, kind of encourage economic growth. From then, what we've seen happening is that you'll have local villages will actually have areas which they will farm for the palm oil themselves. So there'll be some companies, there'll be some local villages, and what's set up right across that Kilbatanga region is you will have mills. So you will either have companies coming in to process the palm oil, it could be an individual farmers. There's a mill there and they process all the palm oil. So it's initially government and it's more moved into private enterprise now. And some of the big companies are established there. I think I can say that some of the big chocolate companies have sites there. I don't want to name names, but they have sites there because we're recording this. There we go.
Brilliant, thank you, Gemma. Yeah, maybe we've got a number of questions coming through, so maybe if we just get some sort of quick fire responses, if that's
Go
okay.
for it.
So Jasmine is asking, do you think the use of palm oil will ever decline enough to reduce this problem of habitat loss?
At the minute, no. I think that we have to do something. I think Western governments need to pressure big companies into doing something about it. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And then Jacob is asking, has coronavirus had a major impact on your research and studies? And have you seen any impacts on the rainforest or the palm oil production during 2020?
Okay, so yeah, we didn't get to go out to Borneo this year. In the field station themselves, some of the guys at DG, they stayed out there, so their research is continuing. Whenever it comes to coronavirus, within the rainforest and over there, there's a lot of other diseases out there. So really, coronavirus is just one on a big long list of things. So unfortunately, that hasn't halted palm oil plantation or palm oil production out there. It's still been continuing, but we're hoping to get out next year. But the good thing is, COPL and DGFC, all those guys are still over there, so they're still doing the work, and we have told them how to collect the samples for our annual monitoring. So we're just going to have to catch up on ourselves. But a fantastic question.
Great, yes, thank you, Jacob, for that. And Kaylee's asking, apart from reducing your air mileage, how do you suggest we reduce our carbon footprint? What do you do?
So for me as a scientist, I travel quite a lot to my different field sites. I try and use public transport as much as I can. For the ECHOS project, that's some of my field sites over in Ireland, and I'm from Ireland myself, so I don't fly. I would get the boat and train. I also walk as many places as I can do, and in the lab, when it comes to genetics, we use quite a lot of plastics. So at the minute, it's something that's really always annoyed me. but at the minute we're working on more green strategies. So we want to, all the tips that we use, we want to get them used, converted into something. So we're talking to local companies to see what they could use our single-use plastics for and convert them into something. So yeah, we're trying our best at the minute. So I think that the main message is it's just wee small actions in your everyday life if you can manage it, and have a good think about, you know, those big long journeys that you take as well. How can you do it separately? So Natasha, who I work with, she's going to a conference in Russia hopefully next summer, so she's going to train it there, so it's going to be an adventure for her. So, but it also reduces her carbon footprint as well.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Katie, for the question. Joe is asking, or saying, it may just be so this relates to echoes. It may just be a seemingly easier and higher energy food source for the geese. It might give more energy for the geese's migration.
Yeah, that is something that, as I say, that is definitely what we're thinking about at the minute. That's a very good insight. So is it Joe? Yeah, well, yeah, exactly right, Joe. We've got loads and loads of questions, but the first thing that we need to do is actually quantify like what they're eating, and then we're going to also quantify the nutritional value of those foods as well and see how it does. But yeah, that is definitely a possibility. So no, good insight. Good scientists, future scientists out there, I tell you that.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Joe. So Maya is asking, did you enjoy your degree in biology? What were your favourite parts and what did you dislike?
Oh, right. So I adored my degree. I probably wasn't as switched on as most of you guys whenever I was leaving school. I knew I loved biology and geography, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've always had a big passion for the natural world. So during my biology degree, I loved the genetic components, but I also loved, you know, some of the environmental modules, but I couldn't do as many of them if I wanted to do the genetics. So I volunteered at different nature reserves, and then I continued on with my studies, and it was during my masters I was able to know about the wonderful world of conservation genetics and how we could use genetic tools to help conservation. So that's a little bit about what I've talked to you today about. And then from there, I've never looked back. I've been able to merge the two. Whenever it came to things that I didn't really like, oh dear, no, I can't say. There was nothing. I think science is amazing. I think there was a few things that maybe wasn't truthfully my bag. I appreciated all the dissecting stuff, but some of my friends loved that and they're all anatomists now, but I was more the molecular person. Okay, so I liked pipetting. That was my thing.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gemma, and thank you, Maya. So we've got a couple more questions. Pavisna is saying, Pavisna is talking about sharing these research results with the public to actively influence them to take action, and saying how important that is, you know, in terms of taking control and taking control of this and making sure everyone's exposed to the topic. What do you think about that, Gemma?
Oh, I completely agree. So in Borneo, the guys that are in DGFC, they do a brilliant outreach program to all the local schools, just to try to promote that message of, you know, the wildlife. So you get that appreciation in kids whenever they're young. I think they take it through their life with them. I certainly did. And it's even over here, so we have an outreach program both with the Echoes project but also with the Borneo project. I've went to different schools across Wales and Ireland and talked about the research, and I think that just educates people. You know, I think ideally when they're young, but even whenever they're older, you know, I think we could maybe do more on, you know, trying to get, you know, some people like my age, like past it to try and change their ways as well. So
that's brilliant. Thank you for the point, Pavisna. Clarissa has just mentioned about the role of private owners within plantations. Izzy is saying, this is an interesting question from Izzy, how have vets helped in the process of researching climate change? What kind of things can vets do to help with their experiences and references?
Yeah, well, so whenever we go to DGFC, Sergio is the resident vet there. So what Sergio is involved with is some of the researchers there have been tagging the animals and with these GPS collars, and what the aim of that is to see where these animals are going. Are they sticking to the rainforest, or are they actually utilizing those palm oil plantations? So for Sergio is involved, his Pacific project was looking at monitor lizards, so those things that are related to kimono dragons, huge big lizards, big sticky out tongues. So he was involved in making sure that whenever they were popping on the tags that the animals weren't harmed. He also did regular health checks on all the animals that were caught. So yeah, in field stations you'll often have a resident vet. They'll be there to ensure the welfare of the animals, and they'll also be there to carry out their own research as well. And his research was really, really interesting, because we actually did find that some of the species, they do actually utilize the palm oil plantations as well. So you know, that is an area that needs to be explored more. It's just, you know, in its infancy.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you, Izzy, for that question. One last question from the student at Mark Rutherford. So
Mhm.
why is DNA extracted and compared during research when it can mutate?
Okay, so it can mutate, but it often the type of mutations that we're looking at, they are during the individual's lifetime, they don't change. Okay, so we're looking at non-stemmatic mutations. For mutations to be involved with evolution, they are the mutations that an individual will have, but they will pass on to subsequent generations. Okay, and that's a different field in itself. That's looking at population genetics. So at the minute we are looking at non-systematic mutations, and the little bit that we're looking at, it allows us just to resolve that sequence to identify a particular species. Okay, that is a very loaded question. It's a fantastic one, and I could go on about that for hours, but as an evolutionist, I'm not going to. I'm going to be good. So
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you. And thank you for the question at Mark Rutherford. It does bring
yeah,
us very much to time, I think. So really just to say
yeah.
thank you, Gemma, ever so much for your talk today.
No.
And I'll maybe get a final thought from you in a moment. I just want to say as well,
Yeah.
thank you to everyone's contributions. Brilliant questions coming through. But Gemma, do you want to just give any final thoughts before we close?
Oh, no, well, first of all, thank you guys for listening. I hope that you can appreciate that there are people on the ground at the minute. It's not all doom and gloom. We're trying our best to protect the habitats. And if you're interested in any of the research, you know, please get in contact with us, okay, here at Aberystwyth University. So we want to get the message out there. And just thanks for listening, and thanks for your fantastic questions. It makes me feel happy that we've got some really good future scientists out there to take over. From take over the helm for us. So thanks guys, it's great. And thank you Rob as well.